On this episode of Geek Dad Life, we're going to review the new Masters of the Universe Origins He-Man and Skeletor figures by Mattel. Hey everyone, welcome to Geek Dad Life. It's your host, Jay Glatfelter here. If you watched my last toy hunting video, you know that I have recently acquired the He-Man and Skeletor figures from the first wave of Masters of the Universe Origins by Mattel. I have been excited for this line since the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Prince Adam and He-Man set. I bought the set blind, not knowing what to expect other than I am a big Masters of the Universe fan, and I have been working on completing a vintage collection for well over 20 years at this point. Once I got those figures in hand, I quickly realized that I am all in on the Masters of the Universe Origins line. The fact that it is in the same scale as the original figures lets you display it with all of the vintage play sets and vehicles. This line is a Walmart exclusive for 2020, but then we'll see mass retail release in 2021. The first set of figures are going to be He-Man, Teela, Man-at-Arms for the Heroic Warriors, and for the Evil Warriors, we got Skeletor, Evil-Lyn, and Beastman. We're also getting an awesome articulated Battle Cat and a Sky Sled that comes packed with an awesome Prince Adam figure. So Mattel seems to be all in on this line, and I am glad they are because I am all in too. Looking at the packaging for these figures, it's obvious they are going for that original nostalgic Masters of the Universe card back and bubble. You have the classic Masters of the Universe logo over the starry background and that exploding red rock. And then we also have some new appointments like new for 20 in the top left-hand corner, 6+ in the right-hand corner, and a little burst there that says modern posing retro play. The back of the card features new artwork that evokes the feel of the original figures. You also see some details on what you can pose and do with the figure. You also get cross-sell artwork for the 6 figures that are in this first wave. I love how in the little description, it's really going all in that these are retro-style figures with modern articulation to let you put it in new action-packed battle positions. So while I think kids could love these toys, they are definitely going for the adult collector as well. Starting with He-Man out of the box, I think they've really captured that original retro style figure very well, but I absolutely love the updated head sculpt. While the original is absolutely a favorite, every re-release they've done of that original head sculpt has seemed to fall short, including the one they packed in with the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive Prince Adam and He-Man set. I love the more Alcala style head sculpt from the original mini comic series, and I think it looks really good. The original figures had 6 points of articulation, and the new ones are upgraded to 16 points of articulation. Not as many as some modern figures, but a lot of them being ball joints and kind of pivoted joints. You can really get a great range of motion from these figures, especially compared to their vintage counterparts. If there's one big flaw with the original figures, it's that they're in that squatted position using an O-ring type rubber band material that is really hard to replace and rots out over time. With He-Man, you would hope the added articulation would allow you to get him in his iconic pose holding the power sword up in front of Castle Grayskull, stating, "By the power of Grayskull!" I am happy to say that you can get it pretty close. It's not perfect. I wish there was maybe some more articulation points in the wrist, and maybe a little bit more mobility in the head joint to kind of just get him to look up a little bit more. But really, I think it passes that test for me. It looks good standing in front of my vintage Castle Grayskull. I find the paint apps pretty solid for a $14.99 mass retail figure. There's a little bit of slop here and there, but overall it looks really good. I also really like the plastic that they've used for this figures. It has a nice premium quality feel to it. It doesn't feel cheap in your hand at all. He-Man comes with the same accessories that the original vintage figure had. You have half of his power sword casted in kind of a pearlescent kind of metal color. You have his shield, and then you also have his battle axe. Comparing these accessories to the one that came with the San Diego Comic-Con exclusive, it comes up short. There's no paint apps, so it's a lot simpler. You also don't have the alternate heads as well as alternate hands that the Comic-Con exclusive came with. You also don't have the cool little dagger and dagger pouch in his boot that the Comic-Con exclusive came with as well. Not the end of the world by any stretch. Again, I think the cost and price point is perfect on these, but hopefully maybe down the line they can do an accessory pack. So for those that didn't get the Comic-Con exclusive set, they'll be able to have access to some of those cool accessories that package came with. Going side by side with the original He-Man figure, you can see that these actually come in a little bit taller than the 5.5 inches of the vintage. I can chalk that up to the fact that these are not kind of fixed in the squatting position. These you can stand more upright, but even still, these are a little bit taller, not quite 6 inches, but definitely taller than 5.5 inches. But when posing these in front of vintage playsets or on vintage playsets, as well as some of the different vehicles, I haven't noticed any issues with the slightly larger height of the figure. Now moving over to the Skeletor, my first non-He-Man or Prince Adam figure, and I think he looks great. At first, I was a little concerned with his kind of open mouth expression, but I love it in hand. I think it just adds so much more to the dynamic posing that you can do with the figure. Do I hope we get some other alternate head sculpts down the line? Absolutely. But still, like posing this guy in front of Snake Mountain or standing on Snake Mountain, just kind of like looking up with his hand in the air, it really, I think, captures a lot of the personality of Skeletor in this figure. So I absolutely love that. Paint apps are a lot simpler on this figure. Really, only his face gets the paint applications here. The rest of the figure's colors come from it being casted in that color, which I don't have a problem with. The colors really pop, are really vibrant, and I think they look really great. Skeletor comes with the same 16 points of articulation as He-Man, but comes with one less accessory unless you want to count his little added loincloth as an accessory. But the ones he come with do the job and match up to the vintage counterpart. His Havoc staff looks great, honestly pretty darn close to an original vintage Havoc staff. His half of the power sword is casted in that same flat purple color as the rest of the figure, so he doesn't have the pearlescent metallic look of the half that He-Man comes with. When you put the two together, it kind of functions similarly to the original vintage power swords. There's a little bit tighter of a connection, but it still separates at the tip, similar to the vintage power swords. Going side by side with a vintage Skeletor, it's a similar story to the He-Man figures, with the MOTU Origins version of Skeletor coming in taller than the 5.5 inches, but still a little under 6 inches. Again, I can account that for this being able to stand upright, unlike the vintage ones, which are in that squatting position. I do not mind the slightly taller figures. It's still in the 5.5 scale in my opinion, because it still looks just right with the vintage playsets and vehicles and beasts. Overall, I think these are great first figures for the first wave of Masters of the Universe Origins by Mattel. It has been a while since Mattel has directly owned and driven the Masters of the Universe license, and they're off to a great start, giving us new figures that honor its storied past. I know they have big plans for this line, and I hope it is successful enough to give us as many of the amazing, diverse cast of characters that makes Masters of the Universe so special. But for these Skeletor and He-Man figures, they will absolutely get the Geek Dad Life buy rating at $14.99 a figure. It's a great price point for these. Could there be some more paint apps? Sure. Could we get some more accessories? Sure. But we're getting a mini comic, a figure with accessories. They look great, they pose great. For under 15 bucks, I think that's a great deal. And there's no reason they can't do expansion packs and other bonus packs to give us some of those things like alternate head sculpts and more hands, more accessories, all that kind of stuff down the line. I will absolutely be buying as many of these toys as I can to display with my vintage figures, so be sure to stay tuned to this channel for more reviews of Masters of the Universe Origins by Mattel. Be sure to check out some other videos on my channel, like this most recent one and this one that YouTube wants you to see. And until next time, hasta luego and goodbye.